Hi, I'm Danielle, the Flutterfly. This is my Beginning Flutter series, and we're starting with the Text Widget. The Text Widget is the first thing you'll probably learn, and it's one of the most important. So let's go check it out, shall we? Whenever we're trying to learn a new widget, the web page is a great place to go. In this case, we're looking at the text widget on flutter.dev. And if we scroll down to the constructor, we will see it actually has two constructors. We're talking about the first one right now. And it takes a positional parameter, which is quite unusual for Flutter. Most of them have all of their parameters named. But in this case, we have just a positional one, which is the string. So if we go look here, I can see that I've created an app, and it says that I have, it has a text widget that says I have one bird, which I do, and it says my bird is named Dory, which he is. So that's great. It's easy. That's one of the first things you'll do. This is where you would do hello world. But let's go ahead and say I'm going to actually put in the name that I have here. So let's do that. So let's just say my first bird is named. There we go. And if I save that, you'll see over on the right hand side that it's there. It's done. My first bird is named Dorian Gray. Now up here I can also do the same thing with num of birds, which is another variable I created. And if I save it, nothing happens because I have one bird. And also, if I need to do math or something, I could just go ahead and put it in braces. The braces are not necessary. In fact, they're actually kind of not preferred if you are just doing a variable. But if it was like a class and I had to say, dot something or things like that, then of course they're necessary. If I'm doing math, it's a function call, I can do any of that in a string. It's pretty amazing. And I can even make it to where we are doing this, and that's actually okay, and I could just say plus num of birds, and we do that and we save it, and it's so you can't do that because it's actually not a string, but every class has a toString method. So I can do that, and I have to say plus, and there we go. And you can see that it comes up there correctly. So my bird is named Dorian Gray, and I have one bird. So this is an example of how you would use the strings, and this is the most basic version of text. However, we need to look at more options to make it more useful. Okay, I put a couple of more facts about me on the screen there, but the presentation's kind of boring. So let's add some style. We do that with the style, which takes a textStyle parameter, and we could, for example, change the color to be red, which is my school color, and that looks good. But let's do more to it. Let's maybe change the font size. We could make that 20. Let's change the font weight. That's whether it's bold or things like that. So we could do font weight dot bold. I could even change the font style to make it italics. Okay, if I do all of that, you will see where it comes in like there. Okay. Now let's look at another way to do this. Let's go to the other. It needs to be bigger too now. It needs to fit. So let's still do a style. But this time we're going to talk about themes. And themes are pretty important. I'm not going to go over them too much here because I'll have a future episode with them. But if we do theme.of, which is a very common pattern here, it gets the current one from the context. And then we do the text theme, which is a textStyle object. And I could say display 1. And when I do that, it will make it bigger. But we still want to make changes. So let's go ahead and do a copy with, which is another common pattern here. In this case, we can make it font weight bold. And if we do that, then we will see that it will change it. And I could change color. I could change things like that there. Now, if we look at this, we'll notice that it's no longer centered on the top row. Why is that? Let's talk about it. Okay. I've drawn 3 different widgets with 3 different sizes. So for the first widget, the widget size is only the width it needs to be. For the second widget, it's the full width. And for the third widget, it's somewhere in between. Now, how you deal with this depends upon the size it is. So for example, with this one, you would want to center it in the frame, the widget itself. For this, the widget can't be centered because it takes up the full width. So you need to center the text. And for the third one, you would actually need to do both. Here's a way you can tell if that's what's going on in your code. Go over to Flutter Inspector, and in Flutter Inspector, there's an option up here that will actually show you how things are laid out. In this example, you can see that the I live in South Florida is bounded exactly, so its width is exactly the width of the text. However, the "I graduated from the University of Oklahoma" goes the full width. And that's the reason why we see what we're seeing. Okay, to fix this, we have to decide what it is exactly we want to do. If we just want to center it, then TextAlign's our friend. But what if our layout was very tight and we need to make sure we didn't take up more room than one line? Well, it has a maxLines. And when we do that, you'll see that it just cuts off. That's also called clip on the next possibility, overflow. But I like ellipsis, which just gives us the dot, dot, dot pattern. They also have a new one for material called fade. You'll see this is kind of weird because it's fading toward the bottom, letting I guess us know that there's a second line. But this is another way to go. I prefer the ellipsis because I think that's a pattern that more people recognize. For this next section, let's talk about things that affect the sizing of your lines. So we have a couple of parameters here. The first is textScaleFactor. Now if you take a look here, I've got two different font sizes. I've got a font size 20 and a font size 15. Now I could go and if I wanted to scale those, I could change them all, or I could just create, let's create a variable. Let's call it textScaleFactor. And we'll set that to 1.5. Okay, now then, in each of our texts, what we do is we would create from a textScaleFactor, and we would call it textScaleFactor. And we can actually add that to each of our texts. And when we do that, we will see that it will actually scale them all evenly. So if I save it, you'll see it's 1.5 times bigger. Well, we could go up here, we could make it 2.0. And you'll see that it just scales it all at the same time without having to worry about what font sizes or fonts I had in there. The other tool we have in spacing out our lines is the strutstyle. So in this case, I've created a variable called double space strut, which is a strut style, and I'm specifying the font size of 15 and the height of 2. And what that has the effect of doing, if we add it to our lines here, will be to make them all double space. And when I save it, you will see that that is in fact what it does. Now, we have lots of variables that we can use to help fill this out. There's a difference between height and leading. And the font weight and font style should all match what our font is if we're really wanting to be exact. Otherwise, we don't really have to be. And where it really comes in handy is when we use the other text constructor, Text.rich. Let's head back over to the web page and take a look at the Text.rich constructor. The first thing you'll notice is it has something called a text span here. The second thing you'll notice is it's just like the text, except it doesn't have style. And that's because that's in the text span. So if we click over to the text span, take a look at that constructor, it has a style, it has a text, which is named in this case, and then it has children, which are also text span. So it's a little bit recursive that way. Let's take a look at it in action. To show this in action, I've set up a text.rich constructor that contains a text span. The text span has I, and then children have text spans that say am, the, Flutterfly. Notice the spacing isn't automatic, so I had to put the spacing where I needed it. And when I run this, you will see over here, that's what it says. Now, why would I do this? The reason why is so I can do style on different parts of it. So on the text span with the am, I want to set that up with a font style of italic. So we can emphasize it that way. And you will see that's what it actually does. Now I come down here to Flutterfly. I can also set it up with a style that's different. So I set this up with a text style that has a font size of 30. It has a font weight of bold. And when I save this off, you will see that's what it does. I did promise you that strutstyle would be useful in the text.rich constructor. So to demonstrate that, I've added some more lines here, and all of them have the same font size of 28, except for the word Flutterfly, which I made 25% bigger. So let's go ahead and create a strutstyle, which of course is a strutstyle, and I need to tell it the font size is 28. And when I do that, I can go down here, and in the actual text.rich area, I can add in a strutstyle, and it'll be our strutstyle that we just defined. But when I save it, you'll see it doesn't do anything. Why? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's because the line will grow to be what it is by default. However, strutstyle, like so many other things, has the ability to say for strut height, and I can set that to true. And when I change that, you will see that now the space between the lines is the same. But who are you really? I am the Flutterfly, Danielle said emphatically. And with that, we bring this video to a close. Well, there it is. That was our first episode of the Beginning with Flutter series. I'm Danielle, the Flutterfly. Please let me know in the comments below what you'd like me to treat in future episodes. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Say goodbye, Dorian.